This It's On moment is brought to you by On Nicotine Pouches.
If you're just tuning in, we're on the first tee at Fairway Links, and Spencer is up last.
Steve, he's got to be feeling the heat. Everyone's had a monster drive so far.
No doubt, Sue. A hush falls over the foursome as Spencer brings his club back.
Oh, Steve, it looks like it's on.
Products for tobacco consumers 21 years of age or older. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
So what if the struggles of a character from a novel written way back in the mid-1800s, what if they still echo, really profoundly in our lives today?
Right.
Thinking about things like public shaming, hidden guilt, that intense scrutiny from a judgmental society.
Yeah. It sounds very contemporary in some ways.
It really does. It might sound like, I don't know, a new social media scandal, but we're actually talking about a timeless classic.
Exactly. Today we're doing a deep dive into Nathaniel Hawthorne, and we're putting a special focus on his enduring masterpiece, The Scarlet Letter.
Which was published way back in 1850.
That's right. And it introduced one of American literature's most famous female protagonists, Hester Prynne.
So our mission today really is to try and figure out why Hawthorne's work, and especially The Scarlet Letter, still speaks to us so much. We're going to unpack its complex themes, those unforgettable characters, and see what surprising connections pop up with society right now.
It's about pulling out those crucial insights, from different angles and trying to make sense of this literary cornerstone.
And we've got some great sources to help us do that.
Yeah, we've pulled from quite a rich stack. There's a teacher's guide from Penguin Random House, some really insightful literary analyses of Hawthorne's other stories,
Okay.
and biographical details from his Wikipedia entry and the Gilder Lehrman Institute.
So that mix should help us understand the author, the era he was writing in, and, the powerful ideas he was exploring.
Definitely. It gives us a good foundation.
Okay, so let's start with the man himself, Nathaniel Hawthorne. Born Nathaniel Hawthorne. Note the spelling. In Salem, Massachusetts, July 4th, 1804.
Yeah.
And what immediately jumps out is that subtle change he made to his name. He added the W later on.
Yeah, he did that in his early 20s, likely.
Why do that? What's the story there?
Well, our sources suggest it was really to distance himself from his family history, his ancestors.
Of the Salem connection.
Exactly. His great-great-great-grandfather, William Hawthorne, was a Puritan judge, pretty infamous for harsh sentencing.
Okay.
And his great-great-grandfather, John Hawthorne, was actually one of the judges in the Salem witch trials.
Wow. That's quite a legacy to carry.
It really is. So you can understand why he might want to, create a little separation with that name change.
Makes sense. And it's interesting, too, that his father died young, so he grew up mainly with female relatives.
Mm-hmm.
Some sources think that might be why we see such strong female characters in his work, like Hester.
It's a plausible connection.
Yeah.
After graduating from Bowdoin College in 1825, he went back home and spent, get this, 12 years in what he called his owl's nest.
12 years.
Yeah, writing pretty much in obscurity. He famously said, "I have not lived, but only dreamed about living."
That's a really telling quote about that period, almost a kind of isolation.
It suggests that, yeah. And his first published novel, Fanshawe, back in 1828, he released it anonymously, paid for it himself,
Oh,
and later actually tried to suppress it. He wasn't happy with it.
so not exactly an overnight success.
Not at all. It wasn't until Twice Told Tales, his collection in 1837, that he started getting some local recognition. And that was thanks to a friend, Horatio Bridge, who actually covered the publishing risk.
Friends in the right places.
Definitely helps. He also had these more practical jobs, too. He worked as a weigher-engager at the Boston Custom House for a bit,
Right.
and later as a surveyor back at the Salem Custom House. That experience feeds directly into the introduction of The Scarlet Letter.
Ah, the Custom House intro, yeah. And here's a detail I found fascinating. He briefly joined that transcendentalist utopian community, Brook Farm, in 1841.
Oh, yeah. That's a great anecdote.
Oh.
He went there hoping to save money for his marriage.
But wasn't exactly living the high life, was he?
Not quite. He was famously put in charge of shoveling what they called the gold mine.
Which was...
Laugh steadily. Seriously, the great Nathaniel Hawthorne shoveling manure. Yep. Quite the grounding experience, you might say. But it definitely gave him material later for his novel, The Blithedale Romance.
It just shows how life experiences, even the, let's say, earthy ones, can fuel creativity.
Absolutely. And these personal struggles, his observations, they all happen within this larger context of 19th century America, which was itself going through massive changes.
Right. The country was really trying to define itself, wasn't it?
Exactly. It was looking for its own voice, its own national literature, trying to move beyond just European models after gaining political independence.
And you had huge events shaping society.
Huge. Think about the Louisiana Purchase, the War of 1812, Jacksonian democracy, the abolition movement gathering steam.
The Mexican-American War, eventually the Civil War looming, the Industrial Revolution kicking off.
All of these massive shifts were influencing cultural values, societal norms, everything Hawthorne was writing about.
So how did all this turbulence, this search for identity, shape his actual writing style? His work gets labeled dark romanticism or gothic romance. What does that mean?
Well, unlike maybe the more optimistic side of romanticism, dark romanticism, and you see this with Poe and Melville too, really digs into the darker aspects of human psychology.
Okay.
It explores guilt, sin, the psychological torment people go through. Nature isn't always presented as beautiful and serene. It can be shadowy, suspicious, foreboding.
So less sunshine and more shadows.
Pretty much. It often shows the mind kind of deteriorating maybe into madness or obsession. And symbolism is huge in this style, using symbols to get at those deeper psychological effects.
Interesting. It's like looking beneath the surface of things.
That's exactly it. Hawthorne himself talked about filtered light, like moonlight, being the best medium for a romance writer.
Why moonlight?
He said it makes things so minutely visible, yet so unlike a morning or noontide visibility. It sort of spiritualizes the details, makes them things of intellect.
So it's not just about realism, it's about getting at the inner life, the spiritual, the psychological.
Precisely. That seems to be his aim as a writer.
Which brings us perfectly to The Scarlet Letter, published mid-March 1850. And this was a big deal, right?
Oh, huge. It was one of America's first mass-produced books. It sold 2,500 copies in just 10 days.
Wow, that's incredible for that time.
It really was. It became a bestseller fast and kicked off Hawthorne's most successful period financially as a writer.
But how was it received critically? Was everyone on board?
Not quite. The reception was pretty divided. One contemporary critic complained about its morbid intensity and called the psychological detail painfully anatomical.
Ouch. Painfully anatomical.
Yeah, but then fast forward to the 20th century and you have someone like D.H. Lawrence calling it a perfect work of the American imagination.
So a real range of reactions shows its complexity, maybe.
Definitely.
So for anyone needing a quick refresher or maybe coming to it new, the novel opens with this incredibly powerful image, Hester Prynne.
Young woman forced to wear this scarlet letter A, elaborately embroidered, interestingly, on her chest.
Standing on the scaffold, holding her baby daughter, Pearl, publicly shamed.
Because she had the child while her husband, Roger Chillingworth, was presumed lost at sea. And crucially, she refuses to name the father.
That refusal is central. And the novel's structure is often analyzed around those three key scaffold scenes, right? Chapters 2, 12, and 23.
Exactly. They mark these pivotal moments of public judgment, private anguish, and eventual revelation.
And those core themes just hit you immediately. Sin, guilt, public shaming, it's all there from page 1 with Hester on that scaffold.
It really forces you to confront the nature of sin and society's demands for contrition, especially public contrition.
You know, reading about that public shaming, it's hard not to think about today. The platforms are different, social media maybe, but that impulse.
Who publicly condemn and demand repentance.
Yeah. Has it really changed that much? Or is it just faster and louder now in our court of public opinion?
That's a really sharp connection.
Yeah.
One source we looked at puts it so well, saying that today, sin is condemned and contrition demanded. It must be public and immediate to be sincere.
Public and immediate, that feels very current. The speed of online judgment.
It really does. It highlights how that demand for a performance of repentance is still with us, maybe even amplified now with a global audience.
And the source mentions slut-shaming too, right? As a modern parallel.
Yes, a 2016 LA Times article defined it as the practice of punishing or making character judgments about people, usually girls and women, based on their sexual activity or assumptions about it.
A very direct line back to Hester's treatment. It also makes you think about how, in the novel, the female townspeople often seem harsher than the men.
That's a point often discussed. Does that kind of judgmental tendency still exist today? And why might that be? It's worth reflecting on.
Another huge theme tied directly to Hester's punishment is the individual versus the community. Her isolation is palpable.
Absolutely. Even when she later finds a role through her needlework and quiet service, she remains fundamentally separate.
And this isolation often plays out against that backdrop of nature versus civilization.
Right. The Puritans in the book saw the forest as this dark and evil place, untouched by God or man, something to be feared.
While the town, civilization, was meant to be the haven of safety.
But Hawthorne plays with that, doesn't he? The forest also becomes a place of freedom, of truth, for Hester and Dimmesdale sometimes.
It does. It reminds me of that Thomas Cole painting, The Oxbow, from 1836. It visually splits the canvas between wild, stormy nature and this calm, cultivated landscape.
That's a great artistic parallel. And you can contrast that Puritan fear of the wild with someone like Thoreau over at Walden Pond.
Right. In Walden, nature is much more positive. He writes things like, "Every morning was a cheerful invitation." A totally different vibe.
Completely different. Now, another angle that gets a lot of attention is whether The Scarlet Letter can be read as a feminist novel.
Hester certainly seems incredibly strong.
She really does. Literary critic Regina Barreca argues pretty forcefully that Hester emerges as the genuine hero of this book, and that the male characters, Dimmesdale and Chillingworth, are literally pale in comparison.
Pale in comparison. I like that.
And Hawthorne himself, sources say, wrote quite empathetically about women's rights, women's work, and women in relation to men.
And didn't John Green connect this to more modern issues?
Yes. His analysis links the novel's themes, things like misogyny and entrenched power, to contemporary issues around class and race.
Interesting. He brings in Francis E.W. Harper's 1855 poem, A Double Standard.
Right, which critiques the unequal treatment of men and women regarding sexuality. Shows these conversations have been going on for a long, long time.
Absolutely. And you can't talk about Hawthorne without talking about symbolism and ambiguity.
Oh, he's considered a master of both,
Yeah.
especially ambiguity. He often leaves things open to interpretation.
The Scarlet A itself is the prime example, isn't it?
Totally. It starts as adultery, obviously, but its meaning just evolves throughout the story.
People start seeing it differently.
Exactly. It becomes almost a badge of courage and integrity. Some start saying it stands for able because Hester becomes so capable and helpful.
Or even angelic.
Right. That transformation of meaning is key.
And Hawthorne seemed very conscious of using symbolism to explore those psychological depths we talked about.
Yes, and he had this interesting way of positioning himself in the narrative. In the Custom House introduction, he calls himself editor, or very little more.
Like he just found the story?
Sort of. It's a framing device, but it impacts the tone, how you read it. He's speaking directly to you, the reader, pulling you in.
And visually, the use of light and dark imagery is constant.
Constant. That continuing contrast between dark and light creates this foreboding atmosphere a lot of the time.
But there are moments of light, too, like the rose bush.
Yes. The rose bush outside the prison door. Hawthorne explicitly calls it a sign of hope right near the beginning. A little bit of beauty in nature against the grim Puritan setting.
Okay, let's dive into the characters themselves because they go through such profound changes. Starting with Hester.
Right. Introduced as this beautiful young woman, branded as a sinner, taunted by her neighbors. But even then,
she has this dignity. She stands straight and tall, imperial and grand, proud and strong, even while isolated.
yeah, she possesses what many see as the strongest moral fortitude in the novel. She really is, as Barreca said, the genuine hero, emerging as a kind of radical visionary by the end.
But her journey isn't easy. Her beauty, her womanhood, it's initially suppressed by the shame, by the letter.
It is. She becomes quite plain, hides her hair. But eventually she finds her own path, returns later in life to this quiet life of service, helping others.
Sewing baby clothes, offering counsel, and she's ultimately buried near Dimmesdale.
And her character seems influenced by real figures, too. People like Anne Hutchinson, the religious dissenter,
Okay.
and Margaret Fuller, the feminist writer who was actually a friend of Hawthorne's. Fuller urged women to fulfill any destiny, even be sea captains, which was pretty radical then.
So real-world influence is shaping this iconic character.
Seems likely. His own mother, sisters,
Got it.
they probably contributed to the portrait as well.
Now let's talk about Arthur Dimmesdale, the young, revered minister.
Ah, Dimmesdale. He's Hester's secret partner in sin, and his story is one of internal torment.
He's compelled by guilt, isn't he? He goes to the scaffold at night with Hester and Pearl.
Yes, under the cover of darkness. But he can't run himself to confess publicly in the daylight until the very end.
And that internal suffering seems to manifest physically. Sources mention his pain in his stomach near the end.
Right. It's often read as a psychosomatic symptom of his profound guilt eating away at him.
Until finally, he's driven to confess. He calls himself the one sinner of the world on the scaffold.
And then that dramatic moment where he tears open his shirt, reveals his chest, and dies.
And the mystery of what was on his chest, did people see a scarlet letter there too?
Well, many claim they did. But Hawthorne leaves it ambiguous, doesn't he? Was it self-inflicted penance? Was it just the manifestation of his inner turmoil?
Or was it Chillingworth's doing somehow?
Exactly. Lots of conjecture. Dimmesdale is often analyzed as an Aristotelian tragic hero, a character of high standing, essentially good, but with a fatal flaw in his case, maybe cowardice or hypocrisy that leads to his downfall, but also to a moment of profound self-awareness or truth through that suffering.
A classic tragic arc, and his suffering is so intertwined with Roger Chillingworth.
Absolutely. Chillingworth, Hester's estranged husband, who everyone thought was dead, he returns with this dark, vengeful purpose.
He gets that nickname, the Leech.
Aptly named in Chapter 9, because physically he's a physician who uses leeches.
Right.
But metaphorically, he absolutely leeches onto Dimmesdale, feeding off his guilt and secrets.
He's portrayed as almost demonic sometimes.
Yeah, described as this red-eyed, satanic black man from the lower regions, often seen gathering herbs in the wilderness associated with darkness.
And his whole focus becomes Dimmesdale's soul, his deepest secrets.
It's an obsession. He even laments that the scaffold, the place of public confession, is the one place Dimmesdale can escape him, because confession would end Chillingworth's power.
And once Dimmesdale dies, Chillingworth loses his purpose.
Completely. He withers away and dies within a year, leaving his fortune, interestingly enough, to Pearl.
Which brings us to Pearl. She starts as this wild infant, almost otherworldly.
Yeah, elfish, impulsive, deeply connected to the Scarlet Letter, almost embodying it. But she undergoes a key transformation, too.
At the end, on the scaffold.
Exactly. When Dimmesdale finally acknowledges her publicly, she willingly kisses him. And the text says, a spell was broken. She cries, connecting her fully to human sorrow and sympathy.
It's like she becomes fully human in that moment.
It seems so. There's a wonderful quote from Suzanne Collins' Catching Fire, actually, that resonates here. As coal pressured into pearls by our weighty existence, beauty that arose out of pain.
Oh, wow. That connects beautifully to Pearl's name and her journey.
Doesn't it? It really speaks to that idea of something precious emerging from suffering.
So, The Scarlet Letter is obviously Hawthorne's most famous work, but these themes, sin, guilt, secret, psychology, they run through his other writings too, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. His short stories are packed with similar explorations. Young Goodman Brown, for instance, dives right back into Puritanism, sin, and that Gothic style.
And The Minister's Black Veil, that's all about secret sin.
Definitely. Or Roger Malvin's Burial, about a soldier who leaves a companion to die but is hailed as a hero. The hidden guilt eats at him.
He also seems fascinated by science and obsession.
Yes, stories like The Birthmark, where Elmer, this artist-scientist, becomes obsessed with removing a tiny flaw from his wife, Georgiana.
And it kills her.
Right, showing how perfectionism, even with good intentions, can be destructive. His splendid successes were almost invariably failures.
And Rappaccini's daughter is even darker, isn't it?
Much darker. Dr. Rappaccini is more sinister than Elmer. His daughter Beatrice's life is literally bound to the poisonous flowers he cultivates. It's full of that Hawthorne ambiguity, good and evil, beauty and deformity, all mixed up.
You're never quite sure who to trust.
Exactly. And then there's Ethan Brand, about a man searching for the unpardonable sin.
Where does he find it?
In himself. He realizes he committed it by prioritizing his intellect over his heart, his moral sense. He becomes cold and detached. He dies, and his heart is found hardened but intact in the limekiln fire.
Wow. Intense stuff. And his other big novel, The House of the Seven Gables.
Published in 1851, right after The Scarlet Letter, it moves a bit beyond just Puritanism to explore inherited guilt, retributive action, how the past keeps affecting the present.
So, the shadow of history again.
Very much so.
Now, The Scarlet Letter has been adapted into film quite a few times, and adaptations always offer different takes, right?
They really do. It's fascinating to see how different directors or writers interpret the source material. Do they stick close? Do they change things, update it?
Like the 1934 version with Colleen Moore, apparently it starts kind of light.
Yeah, sources say it has this playful musical score at the beginning, even introduces some new characters, a bit of a contrast before Hester's serious entrance.
And then jump to the 1995 film with Demi Moore. That one had a very different feel.
Very different. Often described as more prurient, fervent, maybe decadent. It added scenes like bathing, fire dancing,
Right.
and tended to present Hester and Dimsdale as more overtly charismatic and defiant. It took some liberties.
Definitely a contrast to, say, the 2015 film trailer.
Right. That one used suspenseful music, simpler visuals, and seemed to stick closer to the novel's dialogue, portraying the characters more tortured and sympathetic.
It really makes you think about which version feels most like the source text, as the sources put it, and why filmmakers make those different choices. What are they trying to emphasize?
It highlights the richness and perhaps the enduring ambiguity of Hawthorne's original story. It can support multiple interpretations.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it feels incredibly clear that Hawthorne's work, and the Scarlet Letter especially, isn't just some dusty classic. It's still remarkably relevant.
It really is. His way of digging into sin, public shame, isolation, hypocrisy, but also human strength. It just continues to resonate.
He was absolutely a writer of his specific time, grappling with 19th century America, deeply engaged with those social and political shifts.
But his insights into human nature, they just seem to transcend the centuries. They still speak to us now.
Absolutely. So the big question then is, what does this all mean for us today?
Right.
Think about Hester in her final days. She comes back, she dedicates herself to quiet service, helping people. She embodies that final moral Hawthorne gives us. Be true, be true, be true.
Be true. But what does that mean in practice, especially today?
Well, that's the provocative thought, isn't it? In a world that still, maybe more than ever, demands public contrition on social media, in politics, everywhere, is being true about that public performance? Is it about some hidden internal transformation, or is it more about a lifelong commitment to those quiet acts of compassion like Hester eventually finds?
That's a really good question. How do we navigate that? How do we balance expressing our deepest selves, our truths, our emotions?
By finding a community, finding understanding and acceptance in a world that can still be pretty judgmental. How do we stay true?